The sun hung low over the endless horizon of the Wild West, burning the desert plains into gold and crimson shades, while heat waves shimmered above the dry earth. The air was thick with dust, the kind that clung to a man's clothes, beard and rifle like a stubborn curse. Samuel Coltner, a rugged frontiersman, with a weathered face and a reputation carved out of years of surviving bandits, coyotes, and the untamed wilderness, rode alone across the wasteland with nothing but his horse, his twin rifles slung over his back, and a hunger for freedom in his chest. He wasn't a man who sought trouble, but the West had a way of giving trouble even to those who weren't looking for it. The silence of the plains was broken only by the distant cry of a hawk and the crunch of his horse's hooves over gravel. Yet beneath that silence lurked something unnatural, something heavy, as though the desert itself held its breath. Samuel felt it before he saw it, the prickling on the back of his neck, the gut-deep warning that danger was near. He slowed his horse, his hand brushing the polished wood of his rifle, his eyes narrowing under the brim of his hat. That's when it came. The ground seemed to quake with a thundering presence, a beast out of place and out of time. From behind a ridge of red rock, with a roar that could tear through bone, a massive gorilla, dark, hulking, its eyes filled with primal fury, charged into the open desert. Samuel had seen many things in his life, but never this. Never a creature of the jungles in the middle of the West, moving with the force of a nightmare come alive. The horse reared in panic, and Samuel leapt clear, rolling across the dirt as the gorilla's fists slammed into the ground where he had been a heartbeat earlier. Dust exploded upward, mixing with the beast's roar, echoing through the canyon walls like thunder. Samuel rose to his feet, spitting grit, his eyes locked on the monster. "Well, ain't you a long way from home?" he muttered, voice steady despite the storm building inside him. He unslung his rifle with a speed born of instinct, cocking the hammer back as the gorilla beat its chest, each blow echoing like war drums. The desert sun glinted off Samuel's steel barrel, and the battle for survival began. The desert wind howled through the jagged canyon walls as Samuel Coltner stood firm, boots planted in the dirt, his chest heaving from the battle that had already pushed his body past the edge of exhaustion. The gorilla's roar still echoed in his ears, a sound that did not belong to the Wild West, yet had become a terrifying part of its tale. Blood, both his and the beast's, marked the sand in splattered streaks, a savage painting of survival. Samuel wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve, his rifle trembling only slightly in his calloused hands. His eyes burned with defiance. He had faced outlaw gangs, wolves, rattlesnakes, and even the harsh judgment of men who called themselves civilized. But this monster tested him in ways no enemy ever had. The gorilla, wounded yet unbroken, rose again from the dust, its massive form towering, its chest heaving like a furnace of rage, its black eyes fixed on Samuel, hatred and raw instinct colliding in a storm of fury. It pounded the ground with both fists, shaking the earth beneath his boots, daring him to falter. Samuel spat in the dirt and adjusted his stance, cocking the hammer back once more. "You think I'm done?" he growled, voice low, gritty, unshaken. "I ain't even started." With a guttural bellow, the beast charged, its fists swinging with the weight of hammers. But Samuel moved with the precision of a man who had spent his whole life dancing with death. He ducked, rolled, fired, each rifle shot cracking like lightning across the plain, each impact drawing blood, but never stopping the monster's relentless fury. It was not just a battle of man versus beast. It was a clash of worlds, of civilization against chaos, of sheer human will against brute strength. Dust swirled around them, the sun dipping lower, painting the battleground in shades of fire. Samuel's breath came in ragged bursts, his muscles screaming, but his spirit was iron. He refused to bow, refused to yield. This was his land, his story, and no nightmare creature would take it from him. At last, as the gorilla lunged with one final desperate roar, Samuel planted his boots, raised both rifles, and unleashed a storm of lead and grit that tore through the dusk like judgment itself. When the dust settled, silence returned to the desert, broken only by Samuel's harsh breathing and the faint whistle of the wind. The gorilla lay still, its shadow stretched long in the dying light, its fury quenched. Samuel stood victorious, battered but unbroken, his figure carved against the horizon like a legend. He tipped his hat to the sinking sun, a quiet gesture of respect for the fight, then turned toward the future, his spirit hardened, his story written in blood and dust. And to those listening, those who ride with him through this tale, he leaves a message carried on the wind. If you crave more battles, more legends, more tales of the untamed West brought to life before your very eyes, then hit that subscribe button, join the campfire circle, and ride along. The story's just getting started. Night fell over the desert, a velvet blanket of stars stretching across the endless Wild West sky, each flickering light a silent witness to the battles fought beneath. Samuel Coulter sat by a fire, his battered hat resting on his knee, the faint glow of embers painting his scarred face in shades of orange and shadow. His body ached from the fight, muscles stiff, wounds raw, but his spirit blazed brighter than the flames before him. The gorilla was gone, its body left to the sand and the scavengers, but its roar still haunted his ears like a ghost, a reminder that the world was never done testing a man. The tale of his victory would spread like wildfire, carried from campfire whispers to saloon stories, from dusty trails to booming towns, the lone frontiersman who faced down a monster not of this land and stood victorious when all odds turned against him. Yet Samuel knew the West was not a place to rest on legends. Out here every dawn brought a new trial. Every horizon carried a new enemy waiting to strike. The fire popped, sending sparks spiraling upward, and Samuel's hand instinctively reached for the rifle at his side, ever watchful, ever ready. His horse stirred uneasily, ears twitching at sounds unseen in the darkness, and Samuel's eyes narrowed. The desert did not sleep. It prowled, it hunted, it whispered with unseen voices. Somewhere in the distance the cry of a coyote rose, followed by the faint echo of hoofbeats. Too many to be wild strays, too heavy to be harmless. Bandits, perhaps, drawn by the gunfire, curious about the smoke rising from his fire, eager to test themselves against the man whose legend was just beginning to grow. Samuel stood slowly, dusting off his duster coat, his silhouette tall against the firelight, a shadow of grit and steel. He loaded his rifle with calm precision, every click of metal against metal a vow. If the desert wanted to send more trials, he would meet them. If men wanted to carve their names by taking his, they'd have to bleed for it. And as the hoofbeats grew louder, as figures began to take shape against the silver glow of the moon, Samuel Coulter tightened his grip on the weapon that had never failed him, his jaw set, his heart steady. The West had tested him with beasts. Now it would test him with men. And through dust, blood, and legend, his story would rise higher than ever before.